One of the hopes at the beginning was that we remember and pay attention to the loss of Joanna Macy, I mentioned earlier, my co-author of Active Hope. And I want to bring in here something I learned from her, and it's an exercise. It's called the milling. And in the milling, some of you may have done this at practices, there comes a point where you look in each other's eyes and you consider the possibility that the person in front of you could play a pivotal role in the healing of our world. And I know that just that thought, who, me, but there's something here about we're going to come to this, how we deal with some of the disbelief and how we make it through some of the disbelief. I don't know about any of you, but when I entertain the possibility that the person I'm looking at could play a pivotal role, crucial role, when I have that just awareness, I feel a sense of gratitude and respect. I think, thank goodness you're here. All of you. Hey, thank goodness. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for showing up. By the way, would you like to play a pivotal role? Hands up. You think, yes, I'd like to play a role. I'd like to play my part. And I'd say, that's the starting point of this story, is showing up with an intention to play our part. We're really looking then at what supports us once we've done that. So anyway, I want to come back to this thing about pivotal. What's a pivotal role? And this practice that we've just done, by the way, I'm going to invite you to do the next time you're looking at a mirror. When you're looking in a mirror and you look at yourself, just hold in your awareness the possibility that the person you're looking at could play a pivotal role in a story of making it through a time of danger and challenge. Now, this thing about what is a pivotal role, I want to jump ahead here. I don't know if any of you ever encounter this character I call Professor Noway. And Professor Noway is the very clever character, voice inside our mind, or sometimes outside our mind, that knows why there's no way that you're going to succeed, that there's no way it's going to work. I'm just wondering whether this is familiar. The idea of me make a real difference, a pivotal difference in a way with what's happening, the challenges we face, that I may help us make it through. And make it through, I want to recognize that in any journey of change, there will be threshold moments where you bump into something that seems to block the way forward. I think of them as show stoppers, dream blockers, and sometimes they're outside. You want to head away somewhere, and there's a bridge, and there's something blocking the bridge. Maybe there's been an accident, or that in stories they often have monsters and things like that at these threshold moments. And uh, Joseph Campbell, who wrote a lot about stories, he used the term threshold guardian for these blockers of the way. And one of the important threshold guardians is the voice of disbelief. I've put a name to it as Professor No Way, but I want to really acknowledge this idea. I want to introduce the idea of the stage of disbelief, because you can feel a sense of there's no way I can do this, there's no way I can make it work, and then find yourself finding a way. Just out of interest, I'm wondering whether that's familiar to anyone here, whether any of you have had the experience of not believing you can do something, but then some while later finding that you can. And if you have, I'm just going to ask you just to write the word yes. Yes in the chat window. I don't know if anything's coming up, Madeline. Do you want to just
Yeah,
report in on the
there's
chat?
a rain of yeses. Some of them with multiple S's and exclamation marks and things. So yes, it does seem that that's a situation that resonates with people.
And there's something here about being able to challenge our own disbelief. If you've had the experience of at one point in time being absolutely convinced, or at least thinking it pretty likely that you can't do something, but then finding that change, what you've experienced is the idea of a turning point. And if we know that turning points can happen, then we can become interested in how to make them more likely. And one of the things that I was very interested in this, one of the places I learned a lot about this was in the addictions recovery field. And I remember speaking to a client who told me, he said, Chris, the thing about recovery is that it just doesn't work for me. That I've tried so many times to give up alcohol, and every time I try, I might succeed for a while, but then it fails again. And he said, Chris, I've given up giving up because he'd lost confidence in the process. Now, it's really interesting because that same person actually went on to develop really strong recovery. And when he first talked about the time, I'm giving up, what's the point? Someone else in the same room said, I felt like that 3 weeks ago. If we know that turning points can happen, they become reference points of possibility. Reference points are the possibility that, okay, even if I think I'm not going to make it through, how do I know that for sure? And I want to bring in the term here that I find enormously helpful. And again, this is another one that I learned from Joanna Macy. She used this term radical uncertainty. Radical uncertainty is recognizing that you don't know what will happen. And what I do is I use my hand here like this to remind myself I don't know what's going to happen. And my hand represents some different ways it could go. There's better ways it could go. I put my thumb up. Yeah, that's my preferred way, my hopes. And there's worse ways it can go. And sometimes things work out even better than I'd imagined, or even worse than I feared. And so there's this whole range. Now, if we know that, then we can be guided by this sense of possibility, even when things take a turning for the worse. We find ourselves following the little finger, we're down there, and just do this palm of possibility again. Even from the bottom of a pit, it can go different ways. Even with the collapse of organizations, collapse of society, we don't know how it will go from there. But what we can do is identify our hopes. And hopes become like guiding signals. It's a navigational impulse. You're saying, of the many ways it can go, what's the way that I would really prefer? What's the way that I would really put myself behind? And I want to recognize that we don't know the limits of what's possible, but we can hold in our mind a version of the future that is worth aiming for. And if we've got that clear, a version of the future that is worth aiming for from the starting point of where we are, then the Thrutopian story pattern is about how we make it through towards that version of events.